Our devotion today is from Proverbs chapter 7. Before we look at it, I want to remind you today to be in prayer for Juanita Williams. So, Proverbs chapter 7, again, we have Solomon urging us to take what he's talking about seriously here, to commit his words, his teaching, and bind it around our heart and have it with us so we can put it in practice in our everyday life. But part of what he's talking about here really cements for me the reason that he is so passionate about it, that he's so passionate about wisdom and about understanding. And it's because it protects us. It protects us from sin, from death, and from going down that pathway that leads away from God. And that's where his heart is when he writes these things. That's what his goal is. He wants to protect us. And so he gives us this story in chapter 7 as an example. He says that he looks out his window and he watches as these foolish people are hanging out and going about their life. And he watches this foolish young man who wanders around this corner that he really shouldn't be around, but it's a corner where he comes in contact with this prostitute. And of course, we've got this character of the prostitute here who is seductive, who is deceiving, who makes all these promises. And, she knows what this foolish young man wants to hear, and she's telling him all of it, and she is bringing him in to sin with her, to disregard the laws of God, to fulfill the pleasures of their flesh, to do what they want to do. Who cares what anybody else thinks? Let's just do this because that's what we want to do. Let's make ourselves happy. And so she pulls him in. She seduces him. She deceives him in some ways. But ultimately, the pathway that they're on leads to death and destruction. And Solomon looks out and he sees this example of this fool who is going to indulge himself, but he doesn't realize the pathway that he's on. It's a pathway, and it's the same pathway that all sin leads to. It is to death. I don't think we should read this, and I don't think it's his intent for us to read this, though, and think, oh, look at this poor young man who was seduced and tricked by this prostitute. And you look at him, and he's the fool, right? He is the one that is hanging out where he shouldn't be. He knows what he's doing. Okay, he's not caught off guard here. He is purposely putting himself in a place where he's going to be tempted and where he can sin and he can do these things. And I find that interesting. I think about that today. And I think that this really, whether he's talking about a real man and a woman and a prostitute here, or this is just symbolic for any sin. And I think about it more like that. Any kind of sin that seduces us, we can take steps beforehand to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a place where we are going to be tempted or where we have the opportunity to be lured and seduced by that sin. We can put up barriers in our life that say, I'm not going to go here, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to be around these things because I know that there is temptation there, that there's deception there. See, this man went forth. I think he calls him a fool, but I think he understood the position that he was putting himself in. And of course, it led to his failure. When I read through this passage today, it reminds me how important it is to be sober-minded, to be vigilant, to think about what position am I putting myself in? Am I keeping my head up, looking where I'm going, looking towards the Lord? Or, am I wandering around seeking after my own desires, putting myself in bad places and places where I'm vulnerable, places I know that I shouldn't be? I hope that makes sense. But I'm thankful for this passage today. If God spoke something to you out of it, leave us a message on Facebook, on YouTube, and let's remember to minister to one another. God bless you guys, and thank you so much for taking time to listen to